Good Saturday morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, we hear why, as a community, we need to support crime victims and the professionals who help them, because on Monday we begin observing this year's National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Now, according to the Mobile County District Attorney's Office, the week is devoted to renewing the commitment to help those who have been victims of crime. And too often, these same folk, our friends and neighbors, do not feel that they have a voice. Now, as you know, a crime can cover a multitude of violations, from petty theft, burglary to robbery, injury, and very tragically, death. It's also a time to acknowledge the contributions of those who dedicate themselves to help others through their work in victims' services and other allied professions. Now, this is video of last year's event in downtown Mobile. And most importantly, the Vigil honors not only the first responders, but also to recognize and appreciate the people and families whose loved ones became the unfortunate victims of a violent criminal act. The Vigil is just one aspect to help and support families whose lives have been destroyed by crime. As police and prosecutors will tell you, now many of the families of crime victims are left with deep scars that are difficult to heal. Our guest this morning is Mobile County District Attorney Ashley Rich. The theme of this year's crime event is victims event is one of support, as well as the building of trust. It is hoped that events such as this engage communities to get involved with the District Attorney's Office as well as law enforcement, and to provide support for crime victims and their families. For the victims, a conversation with Mobile County District Attorney Ashley Rich. The Perspectives continues after this quick break. Our guest this morning on Perspectives, Mobile County District Attorney Ashley Rich. And we thank you, DA Rich, for being a part of the program this morning.
Thank you so much for having me here.
We're talking about National Crime Victims Week, and not only is this another year of it, but this is actually the 40th anniversary of the beginning of this project. Tell us what was seen back in the 80s as a reason why this needed to happen.
You know, this Victims Vigil is so important because it gives victims the opportunity to memorialize their loved ones. It gives victims the opportunity to be heard and recognized, not only by the justice system, but by the entire community as a whole.
When you look at what is taking place in the lives of a lot of the victims, give us an idea of what they are feeling and going through as it relates to hearing about the case on the news, and of course what they're going through with the criminal justice system at the same time.
You know, Eric, the most important thing to remember is that when you become a victim of crime, your life is forever changed in an instant, no matter what crime it is, no matter whether it's someone broke into your vehicle or broke into your house, or, God forbid, the worst thing, committed a murder. Your life is forever changed because you are now a crime victim. And it's important that we recognize crime victims, and that's what this whole week, this National Crime Victims' Rights Week, does, as well as during our vigil. It gives victims an opportunity to come and be supported by not only the Mobile County District Attorney's Office, who is their prosecution, who is their lawyer, who is going to be there for them every step of the way in the justice system, but to also be embraced by other members of the community in making sure that they feel that the community is behind them and supports the justice system, supports the efforts, and supports them as a crime victim.
Very good point there about the community coming out and supporting people, because as you mentioned, it can happen to anyone. And we know that over the years, I know of families that have had more than one incident, so we can only imagine what they're going through in this particular time. Tell us, when the Vigil program happens, give us an idea of some of those dynamics of what's taking place there.
You know, this Crime Victims Vigil is it's an opportunity for victims to come, and we have a resource fair where we have multiple agencies throughout the community who come and set up booths so that victims know that there are additional resources for them outside of the justice system. We have so many wonderful nonprofit groups here in Mobile County that support our victims. We will have people from Penelope House, Rape Crisis Crisis Center, the Drug Education Council, the Police Department, the Fire Department, the FBI, and we invite all of these nonprofit agencies that give Lifeline's counseling service. They give counseling to our victims, survivors, and victims of crime. So we have so many resources in our community that are available to help victims of crime, and it's one place from 6:30 to 7:30 on Thursday of that week. It's one place where all of these resources will all be in one setting, one familiar setting, there to embrace and to help support crime victims. And it's just a wonderful opportunity for victims of crime to come out and know that the community is supporting them.
I'm so glad you mentioned some of the supporting agencies that work with you in this project. And when you talked about Penelope House, some people are victims of domestic violence. And of course, we've had our share of that this past year.
Absolutely. And, you know, Penelope House is so very important for crime victims and for victims of domestic violence to have a safe place to go. Sometimes they go there right after the crime has been committed. Sometimes they go there later. Sometimes they go there during the pendency of the trial. And it's a safe haven for them so that they know that they can be safe in their living environment while their case is working its way through the justice system, either before or after or during the case. And so we're so grateful to have so many partners like Penelope House, but just Lifeline's Family Counseling Center. You know, every person who is a victim of crime, like I said, it's changed their life forever, and they may need to talk to someone about it. They may need professional counseling, and we provide those counseling services through Lifeline's Counseling Center. So there's just so many opportunities in this community for help for victims of crime, and we like to bring them all together at this resource fair and this vigil to show their support.
That counseling factor is so important. And how is it now encouraging people to take advantage of that? Because so many people stigmatize counseling in our society that they aren't always moving forward in that direction. How difficult is it to get some of the victims of crime to take advantage of it?
You know, Eric, with our healthcare system, which is a whole nother topic, but you know, a lot of people welcome the fact that they can get free counseling through our community resources programs, and they're so grateful when they hear that, hey, I don't have to go through my insurance or pay co-pays or things like that, that there's an opportunity here for me to get counseling from one of our nonprofit agencies here in Mobile. And so, you know, we actually don't have a problem with people taking advantage of that service. That's one of the best services that we can provide because they need it, because, you know, this has been a traumatic event that's happened to them.
Give us an idea of what happens in the DA's office when you get a new case where someone is a victim of a crime, and especially something where they may have lost a loved one, and that, how personal do you all take it?
You know, what's most important is that there's a Crime Victims Bill of Rights that is codified in our law, and that Crime Victims Bill of Rights says that the victims have rights. You know, typically it just feels like sometimes in the justice system that the defendant gets all the rights. They get the right to a speedy trial, the right to a fair trial, the right to affront their accusers. But a lot of times it's not often talked about that the crime victims have their own Bill of Rights, and they have a right to be present at every single court proceeding. They have a right to speak. They have a right to have a voice. And it's so important that we at the District Attorney's Office recognize, the Mobile County District Attorney's Office recognize the victim's voice, and we make sure at every step of the proceeding that the victim's voice is heard and that they understand that their voice is important. Now, again, we ultimately make the ultimate decision as to what happens to cases that come before the courts, but we certainly seek and we want victim input in those cases, and we want the victims to know that they have rights in these proceedings and they have a right to be present.
You know, when you're mentioning that, you think about some of the programs that are on television, and we see all of the benefits, as you mentioned, going towards the person who may have committed the crime. And you wonder a lot of times, you know, what's going on with the people who are victims of it. And you think about the percentages, it's usually a larger group of people affected who are the victims of this.
Oh, absolutely, because let's just say that someone broke into your car. Well, what we find is that's typically there's 10 or 12 other cars that have been broken into in the same neighborhood. So this whole neighborhood basically has been terrorized by this one particular criminal defendant who's decided to pilfer through everybody's cars one night while they're sleeping in the sanctity of their own homes. Or we have an ongoing case right now where I can't speak about the specifics of that particular case, but it's a case that affects where a defendant is terrorizing a whole neighborhood, and we're trying to get that bond revoked because we think that defendant needs to be in jail, sitting in jail while he's waiting his day in court, not in the community on bond, living in the same neighborhood that he's terrorized previously. And so, you know, crime not only affects the individual victim who had their items stolen or had their car broken into or their house broken into or their loved one killed, crime affects everybody around that victim, their family members, their neighbors, their community. And so that's why it's so important that crime victims understand that there's a whole community back there that supports them.
You're right. And so this week definitely needs to be a community effort. And I understand that the theme is support victims, build trust, engage communities from a national perspective. We're going to talk more about that when we come back, as well as some other things that tie into the National Crime Victims Week being observed, of course, here the week of April 18th to the 24th, this week coming up. And so good to hear that this is the 40th year of this observation. A very special guest this morning, District Attorney Ashley Rich. Perspectives continues in just a moment. Welcome back to Perspectives. This Saturday morning, a very special guest, Mobile County District Attorney Ashley Rich, and we're talking about National Crime Victims' Rights Week taking place this coming week, the 18th through the 24th of April. And one of the good things that we were talking about also, DA Rich, is the fact that this is the 40th anniversary of this operation, this project coming into being. And I guess one of the questions, how involved are you with the victims? Are you there every step of the way, or how involved are you?
You know, I had a conversation with one of our victims' family members, and we are there during every step of the process, of the court process. Every time we have a hearing in the case, we are there, and we ask the victims to be there. And we have victims service officers that are there with them, as well as the prosecutor and the trial coordinator, which is the assistant to the prosecutor. And so we are very hands-on with our victims. Not only that, but we make sure that they understand the whole entire process and what's going to happen every step of the way, and that takes educating our victims as well. Not only that, but we also collect restitution for crime victims, which is money owed to the victim. So if your front door is broken down in a burglary and you have to replace your front door and your insurance doesn't cover it, then you fill out restitution paperwork, and we see to it when the criminal defendant is sentenced that they're ordered to pay the cost of repairing your front door, the cost of repairing your broken window in your car, or you know, medical expenses if it's an assault case. And so we make sure that we work with the victims in trying to make them whole for the monetary, not only the mental issues that have come from being a victim of a crime, but also the monetary issues that come from being a victim of a crime. And so we work very hard to get that money collected for them as well.
And that was an area that I was going to ask you about next, where there is a crime victims fund as well as the state victims assistance and compensations program. So you have a vehicle in place to help.
Absolutely, and that is so very important, because oftentimes we have people that don't have the extra $500 that need their front door replaced because someone's kicked it in and their home needs to be safe for the next night for their family to sleep in. And so we petition the Alabama Crime Victims Compensation Fund to get them immediate resources to fix their door, and then we seek from the defendant payment back to the Alabama Crime Restitution Fund, Crime Victims Restitution Fund, that money so that it can help other victims. It's so very important, because you know you don't plan to be a victim of a crime. It's not part of your daily budget or your life, and so we need to make sure that you're made whole and that you can do the repairs to your house or your car, the things that happen as a crime victim, you know, medical attention, all those things, and that's where the Alabama Crime Victims Fund comes in to help.
And you mentioned an aspect of, you know, you aren't anticipating something like this happening to you, and it can happen to, we've had some cases recently where innocent bystanders have become victims.
Oh, absolutely. The two that come to mind are the two precious 3-year-olds. And, you know, they're truly innocent victims. They're babies. They had no idea the situation that they were in. And so, you know, we do have a lot of victims, very, very, very unintended victims that this happens to.
Give us an idea of what's going to take place at Cooper's Riverside Park, the vigil itself.
You know, the vigil, thank you for asking that, Eric, because the vigil is just is so incredibly special because it gives loved ones an opportunity to come up and memorialize. If they've lost a loved one, they can come up and memorialize that loved one. They can put a picture on our vigil board. And we have victims' family members who their case may have been completed in the justice system 10, 15, 20 years ago. They're still coming back to the vigil to memorialize their loved one because it's such a special time and such a special place for them to say, you know, I made it through the justice system, and the perpetrator who killed my loved one or who harmed us, you know, got this penalty and the sentence that they deserved. And they want to come and they want to minister to other victims of crime that are currently going through the justice system. And it's just a really special event. We do a butterfly release in honor of their loved one that's been killed, and that's a wonderful thing. And this year, I'm pleased to report, and this is breaking news, that the Attorney General of the state of Alabama, Steve Marshall, will be attending our vigil, and we're honored that he chose Mobile to come down and to celebrate this week, but to also be there for our victims here in Mobile County.
Definitely a time to raise awareness about victims' rights and services. Give us an idea of what's going on as relates to the process of getting these criminals prosecuted and the jury trials, because the pandemic really caused some major problems in the system.
Yes, Eric, we are extremely behind in the justice system, and whereas before the coronavirus, we would tell a victim that their case would work its way through the justice system within 12 to 24 months. That was what we were doing before this crisis began, and with no courts being held for so long and going 7 months without a grand jury, 7 months without jury trials, and now we're only back to 2 jury trials a week, and only on certain weeks, we're still not back up to full speed down at the courthouse. And so we are extremely behind. And so now, unfortunately, I'm having to tell those same victims that what would have been 12 to 18 months to conclude your case is now going to be maybe 3 years or longer, 4 years, because since March of last year, we've only really had less than 20 trial weeks, and that's been in a year. And so we're very hopeful that in the fall we will go back to our normal trial schedule, where we will have multiple trials during the week and we will have multiple judges that are working in the same week, because right now we only have 2 judges that will handle criminal cases only on certain weeks. So I'm hopeful that that will help us get through with this backlog, and unfortunately it is just going to take a very long time now for a victim's case to move through the justice system, and I'm really disappointed about that.
What kind of stress and pressure does that put on your office?
You know, it puts a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on our office, because every single person that works at the Mobile County District Attorney's Office does it because they want to do the right thing and they want to help victims of crime. They don't do it for the money, they don't do it for the glory, they do it because they care and because they want to help people. And unfortunately right now we're not in the best capacity to help people because of the virus.
Will you be able to increase your staff and do more to help deal with the backlog once things get back to normal?
You know, increasing our staff is not the problem. What we need is we need all the judges. We need to go back to the way things were handled before the pandemic started, with safety measures in place. We need to go back to full complement of judges handling cases every single week, and all the judges being given the right to go to jury trials. And we need help from the public. You know, you've heard me talk about this before, Eric. We need the public to respond to their jury summons, and we need the public to come down and know that we have safety measures in place and know that the justice system is an essential business. Your grocery store run is essential, I understand that, but so is the justice system, and it is so very important for all of these victims of crime that will be at this vigil on April 22nd from 6:30 to 7:30 that they know that there are people in this community that prioritize the justice system over their trip to Home Depot or their trip to the grocery store, and know that they're going to come down and do the right thing and serve on jury duty. We need good citizens to answer the call for jury service and to come.
D.A. Rich, take about a minute and talk about Anaya's Law and what's been taking place in Montgomery.
You know, we're very, very fortunate that that has passed through the House, and we are we're so grateful. You know, one of the things that I'm constantly talking about is if a criminal defendant is on bond and they commit a new crime or offense, then they should not be entitled to another bond, and Anaya's law is going to help with that so much. We're just very fortunate, and we hope that the process will change, because we see so many criminal defendants, and y'all talk about them on the news here at Fox 10 all the time. They're out on bond, they commit a new offense, and then they were given another bond. And I've always taken the position, always, you've heard me over and over and over again since 2011 when I became the district attorney. If you are a criminal defendant and you're on bond, that was a privilege. And if you violate the privilege of being on bond by committing a new offense, then you don't deserve the right to have a bond anymore, and you deserve to spend the rest of your time waiting for your case to come to court in jail, where you don't get to terrorize somebody else or terrorize somebody else's neighborhood. That was more than a minute. Sorry, Eric.
That's okay. That's very timely. And Mobile County District Attorney Ashley Rich, we thank you so much for coming and sharing this morning, and once again encouraging the community to come out and support the event at Cooper's Riverside Park.
April 22nd. Yes, 6:30 to 7:30.
All right. Well, thank you for coming and sharing this morning.
Thank you, Eric.
And we hope that the community also sees the value in supporting the victims of crime here in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you. And once again, the Mobile County District Attorney's Office Resource Fair and Victims Vigil will be held on this Thursday evening coming up. It's April 22nd from 6:30 until 7:30 p.m. at Cooper Riverside Park. Again, it's held each year to honor and promote victims' rights. It's also a chance for crime victims and their families to gather together to share their challenges and to offer support for anyone who has lost a loved one to violent crime. If you have lost a loved one due to violence, you can bring their picture to be placed on a remembrance board. Now, next Saturday on Perspectives, we'll talk with a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and commentator and an Al.com journalist who covers Alabama and its politics. They will discuss the events in our country since the November 2020 election. Was it legit and legal, secure and fair? What caused the January 6th riot at the Capitol, which shocked the nation and the world? New voting legislation now in Republican-controlled states, and the politicalization of the coronavirus. Please join us here next Saturday morning at 9 for Perspectives as we discuss those important issues and seek solutions. I'm Eric Reynolds. Have a great week ahead.
Thanks for watching Fox 10 News. Watch us live wherever you are, on our mobile, our streaming news app, and you can also watch us on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV.